Title 17 U.S. Code 512F provides penalties for the deliberate misrepresentation of copyright infringement. The owners and authors of this video, the Common Denominator, and the Paramystic Broadcast Channel are a nonprofit 501c3 exempt organization and believes in good faith that it constitutes educational fair use, as per Title 17 U.S.C. 107. Persons, agencies, attorneys, and or social media algorithms filing a false or frivolous Digital Millennium Copyright Act complaint may be subject to civil liability. Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Accordingly, viewer discretion is advised.
I pledge of allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the republic for which the flag stands, one nation under Almighty God, indivisible and with liberty and justice for all. As always, folks, I try to tell you that we have a quote, and found this just minutes ago, literally. It's a double-edged quote, as such as our life is. It's a very double-edged situation. Hey, Sally, how are you? That would be Sally from the Paramystic, by the way. The quote is this: in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. Robert Frost. Again, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. You know, we live in a very strange world. And I'm going to say, if anyone has any ideas, please comment on this individual. But this is a guy that's looking for a username. This is our young people in our country. Not all of them, but just someone to, well, have a peek at. So if you've got a name for this guy, please consider it. You know, earlier this week, I sent this out, breaking news that the 49ers have received 3 mail-in touchdowns late last night. They are now the Super Bowl champions. And folks, I sent that out because I wanted to share that with you because it's kind of the light side of. And now the other side. It's very tragic, but today we had a shooting about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There were shots fired near the Chiefs Super Bowl parade. 10 people were injured, several from trampling. 3 are in critical condition, and 1 young man, I believe, is dead. This is where our country is at, folks. We can't seem to be a civilized civil society. But, you know, we have things going on around us and in all aspects. And here we go. The education system is in this nation is garbage. Julie, thank you for being here, because you know what? I think that's about time for me to ask my guest to come on. Heath, would you please come on up? How are you?
Good evening, sir. Very well. How about yourself?
Well, with what we just saw for the news today, you and I discussed this briefly, as well as our producer, Dave, in the background. Your thoughts?
I'm not surprised. It's tragic. It always is. It's senseless. There's no need for it. Life's, well, a life was ended today. Lives are going to be changed forever. And at the end of the day, there was no reason for it.
No.
People behaving poorly.
And I think I mentioned to you, I said 20 years. It's actually been about 25. And the reason why I say now 25 and I change it. Hey, Gerald, how you doing? I think it's because of the Columbine shooting was a big first mass shooting in the schools, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it?
I think Columbine was the first school, yes.
That was the first stepping stone to a school shooting. And as far as mass shootings before that, I have to tell you, I'm not so sure we had too many. I think we had a handful. A father and son. Malcolm was the son, I believe. But, you know, the thing is, within the past 25 years, the dynamics of our lives have changed so very much. And personally, myself, being in a position that I wish I could be at the moment to run for governor, the third thing on my list of things is the educational system. So, Heath, is it okay if we play this audio first?
Absolutely.
Folks, you're going to listen to Heath Gilbert speaking with the superintendent, Matt Robinson, and then basically in a discussion about the academics of the Cameron High School. Here we go. Thank you, Dave.
The other day. Mm-hmm. She is a junior,
right,
and she is working the concession stand at the middle school.
Okay.
And basketball game, volleyball game, I don't remember.
Yeah.
A fellow student came over to her. A man had purchased $3.75 in whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Gave her $4. she had to ask my child how much change to give for $4. She is a junior in high school, and she does not understand $3.75 means a quarterback and change. In the entire 2 hours that my child was there, she had to help this other junior student to make simple change. It's not pennies that are added in there. It's an even number that should be third and fourth grade stuff.
Right.
She comes home this year. She doesn't do the pop.
So Heath, what was his demeanor? It seems like he's very, I don't want to say he's okay with it, but he's lacking some kind of emotion about this, I believe.
He wasn't surprised. I think that he knows. I was telling him something I believe that he already knows. He knows that the kids are not doing well in school. He knows.
And so with him knowing, you would think that, and I got to tell you, when I had a principal in school and I was a knucklehead, to coin a phrase a good friend of mine uses quite often. I was a knucklehead, and my principal would get me in there. Mr. Ogden was his name. I remember him very, very well. And he'd rattle my cage and make me say, hey, you got to step up. You know, you've got to start getting better grades. And he cared. I mean, Mr. Ogden really cared. This man here just sounds so, I'm used to it. I've heard it. It doesn't surprise me. No big deal. And so, Dave, if you don't mind, move on, please.
Popcorn reading. Last year they did the popcorn reading in the ELA class.
Yeah.
You know what popcorn reading?
I do.
Okay. She would come home and say, Dad, it is torturous to listen to it because they can't read. And it is the majority of the class that cannot read. Simple words that they should know at 6th and 7th grade. As a sophomore, they don't know.
Yeah.
And reading is the fundamental building block of any education. If you cannot read, you're not going to get an education.
I wouldn't disagree with that one bit. So, yeah.
So he's agreeing with you there, correct?
Yeah, he is. He understands that reading is very important for anybody that's going to have an education. If you cannot read, you are not going to succeed in getting an education. You have to be able to read.
Oh, wow. All right, Dave.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming the district. I believe that this started with the No Child Left Behind nonsense.
Now, see, that to me was like you gave him a good reason for what's happening. And you're about ready to basically say, if I'm not mistaken, you'll be speaking in terms of leave no child behind. So continue, Dave. I'm sorry.
Hey, before he
I'm
starts, can I possibly explain what the popcorn reading is? So the popcorn reading, the teacher picks a student in the class, and they all have the same thing that they're reading from. And the student that the teacher picks starts reading and will do either a paragraph or a few sentences. And at the end of that, whatever the teacher sets, say a paragraph, the student picks another student in the class. That student picks up where the first one left off. So everybody in the class gets an opportunity to read aloud from whatever the assigned reading is. So my child is sitting in the classroom, is hearing these kids trying to read stuff that we believe they should have been reading in 6th and 7th and 8th grade. As sophomores in high school, they're struggling with words. How is that possible? Anyway, I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, the thing is this, when you listen to, when your daughter, for instance, listens to some of these children that are reading in her class, I don't know if you've seen it. I'm sure you have. I know we've both have seen it, but also it reflects in our social skills because a lot of these children are not able to socially communicate effectively. which is why a lot of times you hear the F-bombs and all the other profanities,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
to
There's a
replace
fair bit of
words
that.
that they want to try and use, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And it's just, I think, them being rebellious too. They're getting to nearly be an adult, and they want a taste of adulthood, and who knows?
Yeah. All right. Let's edit.
know if it was that, because I think actually the reading changed probably before that. It changed sometime in the 90s when we looked at how we were teaching reading, and we went away from how we taught reading, and we kind of got away from phonics, and we kind of got away from some of the other pieces. And now when you hear us talk about the science of reading,
I wanted to stop there because he's talking about the phonics or the phonetics, correct?
Yes.
Again, it's the enunciation and the pronunciation of words that these kids are not being structurally detailed to learn, so they can have that dialogue. I think that's really crucial, personally.
The phonetics not being taught is happening right now in the Cameron School District. So there's a parent, I'm not going to name the parent. We both know this parent. Their child was struggling at the grade level in the Cameron school. And when they dug into the lessons that are being taught, the kids are not taught to sound out a word because they don't know phonetically what the words sound like. So unless they have heard the word at the same time that they're seeing the word, the kids are not able to figure out what that word is. So if they sit down with a new word they've never seen before, they can't sound out the word to figure it out on their own. They need somebody to tell them what each word is. They have to memorize what the word is and how to say it. They can't sound it out.
Whatever happened to I think it used to be one word, 3 syllables, correct?
It's not taught.
It's not taught.
It is not taught.
So if that isn't being taught, and these children are not being able to decipher or look at a word and dissect it into those 3 syllables, that's where you got that mayhem of the kids. I think are angry. Personally, this is my opinion. I may be wrong, but I think the kids are a little angry even at themselves because they realize that they're not up to snuff with, say, the kid next to them in classroom, which is why the bullying starts and the pecking system starts, because I think the kids are actually pretty tired of this stuff as well.
Vincent, I don't know the truth of that. I can only speak for my child. From what I hear, the kids largely are all about equal. So there's a few that stand out and can read well and do well, but everybody else, they're doing about the same. So that, I'm assuming, is their normal. They believe that's normal. They believe that is how people function because that's what they've been taught.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's or what they, there you go, how they've been taught or what they have not been taught, which they should have been.
And they don't know what they've not been taught.
Correct. Yeah. See, I look at it like this, knowing that I had anger, and I'm going to say it like this. I had anger issues as a kid, as if I don't now as an adult. But seriously speaking, I would imagine it's got to be very, very, very frustrating to some of those children. It has to be. And then not to have it where the kid could go home and maybe have that dialogue with mom or dad. Again, it may be a split family. There may be other factors or facets of their life that are not, that just aren't prim and I want to say, use the phrase prim and proper. Some kids know how to use the word please, thank you, no sir, yes ma'am, so on and so forth. Other kids, it's like a new language. They don't have a clue about that.
I agree.
So, all
Vincent,
right, David. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not trying to run your show here, I promise.
No, please.
I would like to say that while we're talking about the school board here, The parents are supposed to be the first teacher. Parents today are not sending their kids to school prepared to continue to learn how to read. So while there is a problem in the school district is not the solely responsible party here. Parents are not stepping up to the plate either, and that's a part of our culture. My children learned to read before they went to school. Mom and dad were the first teacher in my home. Again, I'm working with assumptions here because I don't know every family, but these kids that are struggling in school that don't know how to read, I think that they're not getting their parents that's starting the process at home, because we have been conditioned and taught that it's up to the school to do it. The school will teach our children. And where and when that breakdown occurred, I don't know, but the school district is not solely responsible here. They know that it is bad, and they're not telling the public, and they're not doing anything that I can see to fix it. But yeah, we're all part of the problem here.
You know, Heath, I think you put that very eloquently, to say the least. And I mean that. You really did. I go with the simplest form of the fractured foundation of family.
Yes.
But you really just gave a very good, poignant detail. It's that the parents aren't taking the time to see that the kids' homework is fulfilled, that they're not taking the time to say, hey, read a book. I remember seeing on the news way back when, in fact, it would have been about 20 years ago, there were two Asian women, twins, that were in Harvard University, and their mother made them read one book a week.
Right.
And then the mother would quiz them on that book, because that mother also read that book or knew of that book, or maybe she had the cliff notes. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But she made sure that those girls both read that book, right?
Yes.
And what was amazing about it was she would reward them. So whatever they wanted for that weekend, maybe it was to go shopping, spend $100 on whatever. Maybe it was to go to a roller rink. Whatever it may have been, the child got their reward. And if the girl didn't read the book, then of course there was no reward for that weekend or the following weekend coming, because everything was set up to where the next weekend, the next weekend, the next weekend. Mm-hmm. You do this today, and next weekend you get that. In the meantime, here's another book, and move forward. And when I think about that story occasionally, and I'm sharing it right now, it makes me remember certain friends of mine that had parents that were pretty much like that as well. In other words, they made sure their kid, my classmates, some of them, I remember fathers in particular, two fathers, made sure his kids did their homework. They did not get out. They could not get out and play at the end of the day. Get your homework done, and then you can get on your bike, and then you can go play with the other kids. Well, by the time I get my homework done, we're going to have to be back in for dinner. That's a breaks, but you can go out afterwards for a little longer. So they all had their own way of rewarding their kids. But you're right. You said that so well. Again, we can't blame the teachers solely, and we can't blame as much as and you know how I feel about this individual, Matt Robinson. I like to put the burden of blame on him because, and again, just to, if nothing else, just to make that example, because we're going to talk about it later at the end of this recording. We're going to go into some very detailed stuff yet to come. So, Dave, if you want to hit it again, please.
It's really what we were doing probably when you and I were taught reading, which I think is vastly improved to what we had. So I'll just say it that way. So what we had before. So I feel like we're now behind the eight ball trying to catch up with a lot of kids.
Heath, he's saying it's vastly improved, and yet right now we're still behind the eight ball. And it's vastly improved from when you and I were younger. How can he say that?
Vincent, I didn't ask the guy because I wasn't there to hear his explanation, but I'm going to assume I didn't learn to read in the 90s. I believe that in the 90s, oh, he's gone. Outstanding. In the 90s, when they started to change things, I already knew how to read then. So I was learning to read before the 90s. He was saying that in the 90s is when it started to change. My assumption is that he is saying that when he and I learned to read, I started to read in the 70s. That when he and I learned to read, the system that we had was much better than it was when they started in the 90s, when they started to get away from teaching the kids how to sound out a word, when they started to go to the rote memorization of every word. They started to call it a sight word. You didn't know how to sound it out. You just saw the word and you knew that word by looking at it. I think that that's what he's talking about. So he's kind of agreeing with me that in the 70s, when I learned how to read, it was better, and we learned how to read better because of the way that it was taught.
So when you say sight reading, it almost makes, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I remember in the mid 70s, I was in high school, and right before that would have been about 72, 73, Evelyn Wood's speed reading came out. That course
Okay.
was about 72 to 74. Actually, about 71, 73, I'd say. So that would be where you're reading you're reading a book, and you're really giving a vast overgloss of all the little ofs, ins, on the articles of English, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just looking at all the big words to comprehend the big words and read that material.
Right.
And so what they did was, you're saying in the 90s, they continued that, or try to continue that into the curriculum, perhaps, of the students during that time.
Vincent, I'm taking the man at his word. I don't know. I wasn't learning to read in the 90s. However, when I say a sight word, think of it like your multiplication tables. 5 times 5 is 25. They switched from seeing the letter and knowing the sound for each letter in the alphabet to seeing the word and memorizing the word and the sound that goes with it. They don't know A-N and D, the sounds they make. They can't sound it out because they went to sight words. And that's what they're still doing today. They encourage parents to write words on flashcards and show them to their kid. And just through the repetition process, they learn the words. They learn them by sight. They can't sit down with a new word, a big word, and sound it out. They can't do it because they're not taught how to do it.
Then that means they're also not taught, and I'm just going to throw this out there, they're most likely not taught the definition, explicit definition of verbiage. They're not probably taught how to use a thesaurus to see what words could interact and replace, or be a little bit more a better choiced word for a sentence that they're writing. And they probably didn't really, I guess, when we started getting rid of the encyclopedias and we started relying so much heavily on our phones and computers. So really, that's been those three things right there. A lot of people say, well, what is it? I mean, I've had friends, I've got people in their 30s and 40s. What's that, thesaurus? And I'm like, no, it's not a prehistoric dinosaur.
Right.
Although it is an education, probably.
Oh, it's a prehistoric document, though, isn't it? They don't sell those things very often anymore, I don't think.
I don't think you can even find one. And I mean, I'm lucky. I've got one. But seriously, the thing is, they're the spelling bees. They used to have spelling bees. And a lot of people, use that word in a sentence type thing. They've even gone away from most of that too, I think.
Vincent, I don't know the answer to that.
Wow.
I don't.
Well, you're making me reflect on my education. So thank you, by the way. So anything else, Heath?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Hit it, Dave.
And unfortunately, the kids that are so far behind, Are you ever going to be able to catch them back up?
High school's gonna be tough. You know, it's always tough to start catching kids up in high school, especially when you've only.
Ready for this, Heath?
Yes.
When he was saying catching kids up in high school, I know the reasoning for that, of course, is COVID. A lot of it's going to be COVID. They're going to blame something other than the academia. But the other thing is, he actually says in the next statement, somewhere in the, if I'm not mistaken, he says past 5 years. COVID was only 2.5, 3 years ago.
Oh, let's play the clip. I think you may not have. Let's listen to it again. I need to hear it again. I think that he said something different, though.
Okay.
Or meant something different, rather.
Okay.
Fortunately, the kids that are so far behind, are you ever going to be able to catch them back up?
High school's gonna be tough. You know, it's always tough to start catching kids up in high school, especially when you've only got a couple years left. And at that point in time, you know, really up to 5th grade, you're learning to read. You know, that's still a component of it. After 5th grade, you read.
There it is. Okay. So, again, he's not here to speak for himself. I believe what he was saying is that kindergarten through 5th grade, you are learning how to read. And if by the end of the 5th grade, you don't know how to read, from that point forward, they're not teaching you how to read anymore. They're giving you the reading so that you can learn what it is that you need to know. So if you don't have an understanding of how to read by the 5th grade, the rest of your years in school are going to be a struggle, because they are not going to teach you in junior high and in high school how to read. You're supposed to learn how to do that in elementary. The reading that you're doing is so that you can learn from the book to advance your knowledge. So if you don't know how to read by the 5th grade, you're screwed.
And you would think that they probably would either have programs, a tutor program, maybe.
They do. And the tutoring that they do in the Cameron School and the credit recovery that they do, they need work. The credit recovery, and here's an example. If I were to fail algebra, pass one semester, fail the second semester, I need to do a credit recovery for one semester. I go to summer school in the Cameron High School to try to make up that credit that I'm missing because I failed it. They will have me do the work until I get to my grade to a 60%. And as soon as I have a passing grade, they say, congratulations, you're done, go home. They don't try to instill all of the knowledge that you need to be able to walk out into the world and be proficient in algebra. They only take the time to get you to a passing grade so that they can get you to go to the next grade, so that they can continue to milk you for money, because those kids are a sugar daddy for the school district. Every day that child is in that seat, they get money.
Yep.
And the tutoring they do is kind of the same way. If you send your child to tutoring at the Cameron High School, they have all of the math classes that are combined into one tutoring class that's provided one day a week. And all the teacher is doing in that class, well, the tutoring after school is helping them to do their homework so that they can get their grade up to pass. They are not working on the fundamentals for those math classes that the kids are missing to try to get them to where they have that aha moment, that epiphany. I understand now, I can take A plus B and get it to equal C. They don't do that. They only put time and effort into getting the kids to pass. And as soon as they pass, they're done.
And their ultimate goal, of course, is to see these kids, and I'm just going to say it like this, to see these kids rushed through to stay on their grade level so they can at the 12th grade level say, yep, we had an X percentage of students that graduated, and look at the numbers we have, and we've been able to maintain.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, David, please.
To learn. And so, if you don't know how to read by that point in time, you're going to struggle. And you're going to struggle with learning how to do it fluently going forward. So, that's something, like I said, this year, well, even started last year,
I mean, you may want to just continue on with that for the moment, because I'm getting to the point of improved reading.
started to come up with plans. We changed a bunch of our reading direction, and now we're doing some major intensive reading, because I would agree that without the reading component, I'm not saying math isn't an important skill, don't get me wrong, but
What do you think about that?
Tell me what you think, and then I'll respond. How about that?
Well, to me, it's almost like it's an excuse, and it's not a very good, solid excuse. He's trying to make the point that they're trying to help these students or help them in their reading and so on and so forth, but they're really not doing what they are capable of doing.
Right.
Or but the resources that the schools have to do this for the children.
Right. So this problem is not exclusive to the Cameron School District. This problem is statewide because it is a state curriculum that is being taught. The federal government, Uncle Sugar, of course, has a hand in this because we receive federal money, and with the federal money from the Department of Education always comes strings. So the federal government also has a hand in creating a portion of the curriculum. The majority of this is at the state level. Every school district in the state of Missouri is going to have this issue where the kids cannot read to grade level. They are not grade level proficient. The state knows that this problem exists. Every school district in the state of Missouri, excuse me, every school district in the state of Missouri knows this problem. They know that the kids, by the time that they're in the fifth grade, if they don't leave the fifth grade knowing how to read, that it's going to be a nightmare from that point forward. And instead of holding the kid back to make sure that they have a fundamental understanding of how to read, they push them on to the next grade. So at sixth grade, when that teacher gets those kids that can't read at the sixth grade level, they can't comprehend the work because they don't know how to read. So the teacher is having to do twice as much work to be able to get the kids to try to figure these things out. She's having to do makeup work, trying to give them the reading comprehension to be able to understand what it is that they're doing. They don't hold them back at sixth grade. That goes to the seventh grade teacher, the eighth grade teacher. And by the time they get to high school, as Mr. Robinson said, by the time they get to high school, it's just too late. They know that these kids are leaving the school district. They don't have a basic understanding of how to read and that they're not grade level proficient. They know that we're spending, I think Missouri has a budget of a little over $1 billion to fund public schools, that we are spending $1 billion a year in the state of Missouri, and we're pushing out the majority of the kids that are not able to read at grade level.
Wow. Gerald had asked this question. So what about the students for which English is not their original language and they are not proficient? I think that poses another whole, and I'm just going to say it to you, Heath, that question alone poses a whole new level of hurt to both the teacher and the student and the students around that student.
To answer his question, Gerald, I don't know if they have a metric to be able to track students who do not have English as their primary language. I don't know the answer to that.
But it's going to be a struggle?
Well, absolutely, it's going to be a struggle, especially if they come in, if they appear in the United States for the sixth grade. They've never had English before. They're already past the fifth grade, so they are absolutely going to be on a struggle bus from that point forward if it's taught in English. If they teach it in Spanish, maybe they'll pick up on it and they'll be okay. But if they're forced to learn in English, they don't stand a chance at all.
Right, Right. And with the, and we don't want to go too far off this topic, but with what we're seeing right now with the 10 to 15 million people that have come into this country from so many different countries, I personally see that being probably our number one problem is our communication. And then number two, when you think about the Gen Zs or whoever they are right now, not being able to socially interact and communicate effectively. We're one big country of a Tower of Babylon.
We are.
You know. All right, David.
Without the reading component, you can struggle for a long time. I mean, because you can learn math a little bit by reading, you know.
Yes.
I mean, you definitely are going to learn a lot of your science. You're going to learn a lot of your social studies. You're going to learn a lot of your other things that aren't hands-on, you know, maybe in an art class or whatever. But you're going to learn so much from reading. I think I think we're going to turn the tide on that. It's not going to happen overnight.
It's not going to happen overnight, and he thinks he's going to be able to turn the tide on that.
I don't know how, because they're still not teaching kids how to sound out a word. And I think it was in the same meeting. I sat down with him for 45 minutes of what we just heard. And I told him that the kids in the grade school are not being taught how to sound out words. It was news to him. He did not know that the kids are not being taught how to sound out words. How can you learn to read if you don't know how to sound out a word?
Right. Right.
If you have an understanding of how to sound out a word, you can sit there with a book and struggle your way through it and get a comprehension of what you're reading. If you don't have somebody, if you don't understand how to do that, and you don't have somebody with you to tell you what that word is, you're never going to know what that word is. You're never going to get the full and complete meaning of what it is that you're reading. They still aren't teaching the kids how to read.
Yes. Oh, when God is removed, it gives the devil more room to rule. And, you know, actually, that is a fundamental foundation, I believe, the Bible. There are so many stories in the Bible in and of itself that children were able to, let me rephrase that. I and many of my classmates were able to embrace Noah's Ark, Joseph's coat of many colors, David and Goliath, so on and so forth. And with those stories was the easement of read, because you're hearing the story, you're reading the story, but it all made a lot of sense. But like Julie mentioned, without God there altogether, you know, we're fighting, we're struggling, we're fighting a very big battle here with with the devil, in short. You know, and it will lead to division ethnically, education, and social interactions. Yep.
Sure will.
Yes, it does. Yes, it will.
Yep.
So, Heath, we want to go a little bit further, folks. You cannot believe what we're about ready to present yet. We may as well let Dave go with the PDF as he has it set up with us. Are you ready, Heath?
Absolutely.
Because this is all about you. Thank you, by the way, Heath. Again, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
For everything that you've done, everything you're doing, and you're running for school board. I'll write in for school board.
I sure am.
So, you know, folks, this gentleman here, not only is he a personal friend of mine, and yes, maybe I am somewhat biased because of that, but the fact of the matter is he's walking his talk. And that is what more of us have to actually do, regardless of what it is. And he is walking his talk. He knows the policies better. I personally think, and Heath, I really do mean this. I think you know the policies better than the superintendent who's been there for 14 years.
Some days I wonder.
and I think you're shaming him and embarrassing him. You know, I really do. Thank you, Elisa. She's saying thank you to you, Heath. All right.
You're very welcome.
So there we go. What is this, please?
Okay. So a mutual friend of ours, Dan Landy, is running for school board. And on his campaign page, somebody asked, about the requirements. Is there still a grade point average that a student has to carry to be able to participate in sporting events? And I didn't know that question. So I reached out to the principal and the athletic director at the high school. And you're looking at the response that I received from the athletic director. The yellow highlighted portion, he typed his response into my email to him. So the yellow is Mr. Wank, and the other portion is what I asked. Pretty simple what I asked. If a child has 6 D's and a single F, do they still academically qualify to play on a sports team? And his answer here is, so long as a student doesn't have 2 or more failing grades, they qualify academically to play on team sports in the Cameron School District. Correct. Sorry, that was my question. Correct. It is for sports activities or sports and activities. So yes, there is no grade point average requirement to be able to participate in any athletic event, extracurricular things like band, choir, nothing other than you don't fail 2 classes. That's the only requirement.
So let me get this straight once again. You can have 6 D's and 1 F, and you can still, that is your goal for which to participate in a sport or school activity outside of the classroom.
Correct.
I think that standard and bar is way too high.
Right. What are the sorry, this gets me fired up. What is their priority here? Is it to educate the kids or to make sure that they can come in, be in the band, be in the drama team, and play on a sports team? What is the priority? And when they say, so long as you don't fail 2 classes, it doesn't matter what your GPA is, you're good to go. No, they are there. We are spending millions of dollars in our school district every year to educate the kids. We're not doing it so that they can play sports and be in a band. I don't understand where their priorities lie, and it frustrates me greatly.
Well, you know, I saw this growing up myself. First and foremost, I know I had a very different education. I went to a military school for about 8 years. They took out the military program the 3rd year I was in, I believe. So I didn't have to really go through like the Lords of Discipline movie type stuff. We used to call it a reformatory school.
Yeah.
You know? But seriously, we had to have a 3.0 grade average to have that title of, if we were playing well enough, by the way, to be on first string.
Yes.
And then if we had like a 2.5, we weren't really allowed to be considered playing for, or we could play first string, but we weren't able to say, well, I'm first string. That was kind of a title let for the people, for the students that held and maintained a certain GPA.
Yes.
That's a C+ average on up. And yet here we've got a failing student. And that was another thing we saw, that a lot of schools started, and parents, I think, were involved in this. It's like, wow, my son could just play for such and such college, or if my son could get on the pro ball, the big numbers all through the 70s and 80s, the big salary numbers is what I'm saying.
Right. Yep.
So if we actually, parents in the 70s, 80s actually kind of pushed that kind of mindset that sports are kind of more important, technically, than grades. Because look, my kid can make, X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year throwing ball.
And they weren't worried about the education. If they were gunning, I can't say that. Sorry, I'm going to take back that statement. I don't know the people. I can't say that. Some people wanted them to play ball and to get an education, but sorry.
Yeah, well, that's no, Heath. I think you could do a generalization or an overgloss. I do it all the time. You can't really say that all the parents felt that way, but it seems like it had to be enough parents to where we are today, because today It's all about, let's get the best football team we have. We get 3 of these guys can come out and go and play college ball. 1 can go into pro ball. Boom. We are a known school. And yet none of them can spell their name.
Sure can't read at grade level.
Yeah. What's another letter we have up here? There we go.
Okay, so this is, by the way, that policy that we just read from, or you can have 1 F, but you can't have 2, is from the Missouri State High School Sports Athletic Association, MISHA. All of the schools in Missouri follow the MISHA guideline. So this is from the MISHA guideline. And what is relevant here for students 9 through 12 is item A under 2.3. Well, it don't matter. You're looking at it. Semester prior to participation. And I don't know the answer to this because I've not dug into it, but they're very clear. They don't say in the current semester and the prior semester. They say specifically in the semester prior to participation, your grades, you can have no more than 1 F. So my question and my concern here is, if football is big in Cameron, so let's say the football team, which is played during the first semester at school, if that child is failing all of his classes during the semester that they're playing football, according to this guideline, so long as he is at school every day, would not be disqualified from being able to play in that sport, because they are looking at the semester prior to when he would start to play on the football team. There's nothing in here that says the current semester while you're participating, you need to have only 1 F. So a kid could play football, fail all of his classes, and when football is over, can put his nose to the grindstone, can get his grades back up to where he's only passing 1 class and be eligible to play football again the next year. You and I both, you talked about it already. You had a GPA requirement to be able to play. If I wasn't at the right GPA, my little butt was sitting on a bench. I didn't get to play. I could practice, but I didn't get to put on the uniform and I didn't get to play. I had to sit there as a water boy and watch everybody else play. I don't know that that's right, but I'm looking at the guideline from the state, and that is the guideline that our school follows. I'm assuming that that is correct.
That's just, it seems to be always it just seems to me that it seems like the kids are usually always doing catch up. It seems like they don't have the self motivation. They don't have the ambition. They don't have the self drive. Maybe it's also a lack of self respect and self esteem, but they just don't have they just don't seem to have the oomph to say, you know what, I can do both. And they're not geared or pushed to really doing both, academia and athletic. It's like they're only being allowed to focus on one of the two.
What is their priority? Truly,
Correct.
what is the priority? We're spending $1 billion a year in the state of Missouri for education, but education, the priority is education is taking a back seat to the experiences that they're providing at the school. So the sporting teams, the Performing Arts Center, they just built for $8.7 million in a town of less than 10,000 people. What in the world do we need an $8.7 million Performing Arts Center for? What is the priority? Is it the experience or the education? And we're going to show people here in a minute, but I think it is the experience that is the priority for our school district. It's reprehensible.
Yes, it is. Go ahead, Dave, please. The attendance here. A participant must maintain a 90% attendance record. He or she must be in school for the entire day of the event or for practice or will be ineligible to participate in any school activity, field trips, extracurricular activity, events, etc., unless a compelling reason is approved by the principal or athletic director prior to the absence. A student must be in attendance for all 7 blocks the previous day if a contest falls on a non-school day. Rip that
Okay.
one a little bit.
So the part that is interesting to me, you can have 1 F and 6 Ds, and it's okay for you to continue to play on the sports team. But if your attendance rate drops below 90% and the school district is not getting paid for you to be in that seat, you can no longer you can no longer play. So they are making it a requirement to be able to play on the sports team that you're there 90% of the time. They will keep you from playing on the sports team for your attendance, but they won't keep you from playing if your grade point average isn't above a C.
Wow.
Again, that speaks to the priority. The
And
only thing that they really care about is the money.
it's having that seat, having a person in that seat for that money. And if I'm not mistaken, well, I know I've got this 17,800. Last year it was close to just a little over 15,000, but it's already gone up in 1 year. 17,800 per student in that classroom for the year to be taught. You know, Heath, this is where I think parents who really do care, and I'm not saying that they don't in some cases, but the parents that can fluctuate enough to work in the schedules of homeschooling. Again, I digress. I really do think that we could give those parents that money that as a tax rebate to homeschool their child, or to find that child, to give that monies to that family for them to maybe choose a private chartered school, a private school, some school other than. Because right now the public school is nothing but a money-making machine.
Yes.
And that's all they care about.
Yes.
And when you get a superintendent in this case here, and I'm sorry, folks, you listen to the audio. I really kind of wish we could play it all again, all from the beginning straight through. So you could just hear the tone, what I feel to be the tone of the superintendent. It's like he really doesn't care. I mean, he does. Kinda, but he doesn't. Because if he did, he'd have a little bit more fervor and saying, I don't want to do this. I want to.
She is a junior, and she is working.
Oh, I don't know what happened. I said I had wanted to earlier. That's okay, Dave. But no, he just doesn't have the fervor and the passion to say, by golly, I don't want us to just be good in football. I want our students to excel in academics.
Yes.
I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, Heath, but I'm frustrated. When you brought this to my attention, this was because of a question I had asked a few weeks, and at the close of this, when Heath leaves, I'm going to be explaining some more things that really get my ire. And I don't want Heath to be identified with what I'm going to tell you, by the way. So yeah, it's going to be a good one, I'm sure. But Heath, I just don't think he feels like he's not a general I'd want to stand behind, or an admiral.
Vincent, I think that he cares. I do. I have had many conversations with the man over the past year. I sit down with him for 30 to 45 minutes at a time every month that I address the board. I think that he cares. But the reality is that his hands are, it's to some extent tied, because this is being done at the state level. The reading curriculum is set at the state level. And it is easier to go along and get along than it is to make waves and to push to educate the kids. If he, again, assumptions on my part, I don't know this to be a fact, but if he were to push back against the state, and if he were to start holding kids back, for example, that can't read at the end of 5th grade, if he said, look, we're going to start holding kids back again, your child can't read, they have to stay, that the community, a lot of the parents would rise up and say, you can't hold my child back. You can't hold back little Johnny. Little Johnny's a little angel. And he might lose his job. But the Board of Education, they can't get fired. Why aren't they standing up? Why aren't they coming out and telling the parents, folks, there's a real problem here. Only 42% of our kids are able to read at grade level. There's a problem. They're quiet. They celebrate when we go from 42.8 to 42.9. They celebrate.
What was what's our next picture, please, Dave? I think it's great. Yeah, the graph, the diagram there. We can see right here on this diagram that isn't this the earned credits, whatever is greater than 80%? Is that what that's all about? This 4-block program and 8-block
Vincent,
program?
I don't see anything on the screen other than you and I.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. For some reason, it's not on a screen. It's a diagram for the sample high school's academic schedules, meaning that the academic schedules are like a 6-period day, 5 each, 7-period day, 5 each, so on and so forth down the line. But I see for this particular deal here is this is where we're trying to see preparing the kids for college. This is a graph that was used for college. Do you see it at all, Heath?
No, I don't. I know what you're talking about, though. That comes out of the MISHA guideline, and they have different rules on how many classes a child can fail based upon how many blocks the school has during the course of the day. So some schools have 4 blocks, some have 6, some have 7, some have as many as 10. And that is the MISHA guideline that shows, because Cameron has 7 blocks during the day at the high school level, that so long as the child is only failing a single class, they qualify to participate in a sporting event in the state of Missouri.
And so, like in that case there was one piece that said you had to, I can't even believe I forgot, 8 out of 10. You had to at least pass 8 out of 10 in order to participate and
Right.
be a part of the sporting program or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So for a school that has 10 blocks, so they have 10 classes during the school day, they can fail 2 classes out of the 10 and still be able to participate. So long as they don't fail 3, they're good to go.
Right on. And finally, this last letter, I believe this is with Mr. Crench. And folks, if you look at this this website right here, maybe you can explain what this in better detail, what that website is and why we're placing this up here, Heath, please.
Vincent, I don't see it, brother.
Oh, you don't see it. Okay, it's the documents for the Google documents. In the attached handbook, you will find all eligibility requirements to participate in all school activities at CHS. There is no grade point average requirement.
Oh, okay. That's the other email. That is the email from the principal at the high school. I asked the same question. A child fails 1 class and has a D in 6 other classes. Are they eligible to participate in a sports team? And he agrees and says, yes, we follow the MISHA guidelines. So long as they're only failing 1 class, it doesn't matter what their GPA is. They can play on the sporting team.
And you and I actually went to that website and we pulled it up, and I believe we were looking at the ranking numbers and the 4-year graduation rate, the District A. We were ranked 225 out of 452 with a graduation rate of 94.3. And we're considered at the top 89% of the state. And yet at the ACT grade level, we're at 127 out of 456 schools, I believe, or rankings, with a composite score of 20.4.
Right.
And I'm probably asking you to, at this point, because I'm reading it right now. It's just that we don't have our proficiency rating is just deplorable, 40%, I believe. Correct?
Correct. So the state test that they do at the end of the year, the MAP test, they got all the results back. They test them in reading, mathematics, and science are the three areas where they test. And they get those test results back, and they do magic tricks to determine what these scores are going to be. But they come back with basic, below, let me start at the bottom. Below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced are the 4 levels that a kid can test at on that exam. 42% of the kids in the entire school district, 1,600 students, are grade level proficient in reading. 94% of the students graduate at the end of their time at the Cameron School District. Only 42% of those kids that are graduating are able to read at grade level.
Less than half of the graduating class are able to read at that grade level of 12th grade.
Yes. So every year they're pushing out kids, and it's not just the reading that's bad. Mathematics is bad. I think the mathematics is a little bit lower. No, I don't remember. I looked at so many numbers in the last month or so, but the mathematics score is equally as bad. It's in the 40 percentile range. It's less than 45%. So the same group of kids, they're not grade level proficient in reading. They're not grade level proficient in math. But Matt Robinson stands there on that stage and hands every one of them a diploma and says, here you go, you've graduated high school. And those kids go out into the workforce and say, hey, Mr. Employer, look here. I've got a diploma. I know how to read and do math. And that child that doesn't know how to make change from a $3.75 purchase when they're handed $4 is going to end up going somewhere, possibly, and making change.
Wow. I know you spoke briefly, and you didn't need to get too much deeper on it, the theater that they built for $7 to $8 million. You also brought up something last night in conversation with me. And folks, by the way, I think you can tell Heath and I speak quite often. I don't know. I always say I'm his shadow because I have to tell you, I can't keep up with the man. But you also brought up to something to the extent, and correct me if I'm wrong, $500,000, $500,000 is what they are wanting to spend. Cameron High School wants to spend this money on AstroTurf.
Dan Landy and I went to the school board meeting in August, and they were discussing the budget. And there's a lot of money that's sitting in the bank. And he was explaining to the board that, yes, we have that money now, but we're saving it for future expenditures. So, yes, there's money sitting in the bank, but we can't use it because it's going to pay for something else. And he was giving the figures off the top of his head, but he mentioned at that meeting that, for example, we're going to have to replace the AstroTurf on the football field. And he said he believed that he thought the cost was going to be $500,000. At a high school with a community of less than 10,000 people, they're going to spend $500,000 to put AstroTurf on the football field.
Wow.
Yes.
That's just crazy.
That's is
just crazy.
And don't get me wrong, I love football. I played football. I love football. I love football. But it doesn't seem like it's a good use of taxpayer money to spend $500,000 to put AstroTurf on a football field. They're not there to play football. They're there to get an education. And again, it circles right back around to where are their priorities. Our kids are failing. Our kids are not learning how to read. They're not getting an education, but they're wanting to spend $500,000 for a football field, for the AstroTurf on the football field. It doesn't make sense to me, Vincent.
It doesn't. And I'm so sorry that I didn't get this. I just put this banner up. Obviously, you can tell. I wanted to have it up there earlier, and I really truly did. It's just, I've got to say, it's so never a dull moment with you. It's always engaging. It's always a positive. Well, we may not have positive outcomes, but we're able to have these positive conversations of concern. And we are both very, very concerned, as well as and I say this like this, a very small group of people in Cameron are concerned. And we've got some wonderful people working with us and around us. I think of Greg and Debbie Cox. I think of Joyce Tigner, Travis Eldridge. I think of Dan Landy. And Dan Landy's running for school board.
He is on the ballot. Yes.
Yes, he is on a ballot, and you're a writing candidate on that ballot. And we also have Colleen and Lonnie from the Passion Church, Pastor Harding of the Passion Church. We've got a really great community here, Heath, and we have other candidates, by the way, that are running for the school board. I've reached out to them, and I'm going to continue to reach out in hopes that they can come to. I believe you are going to have a debate. Am I correct in saying that? Or a conversation?
There may be a couple of them. Yes, we're looking at doing one this month, and the Teachers Association is hosting another one sometime in March. So we'll see.
Well, the one that we're very excited about is the first one, because it's not going to be under a controlled dialogue, because the teachers one is going to be under controlled dialogue.
Yes, they don't want me to talk about the books.
Yeah, with Dirty Dan, the retired minister, Kirscher, who also removed himself as president. I personally like to say thank you to him for stepping down after being requested. But seriously speaking, we're going to have something, I believe it's the 23rd
of February at the American Legion. I think it's 6:00 at night.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're hoping to be able to have a camera set up that's going to live stream the event, and anybody that is interested can watch it or even push it out so that others can.
And I believe Richie King from WO Entertainment has offered his services, I think, of doing that live feed as well as moderating it with you guys. I believe
Outstanding.
he's going to do that.
I didn't know that he was going to do the live feed, but that's fantastic. I hope that he does. If he does, I don't have to mess with it. I could worry about the debate.
Well, and if nothing else, I think, it's only a 20-mile jaunt, but I'll be there. Well, we'll iron out those details, but I do think that we should get that a live feed on that, by the way. So I wouldn't mind having dibs on the common denominator if you don't mind. I would at least,
as long as somebody does it.
There you go. Heath, the pornography in the school has been well, actually, you and I actually did meet with the statistics and percentages and the ratios that you had presented to the school board on October the 17th of 22. And I was very impressed with you. And then we ended up, and I'm going to say it like this, I believe it was divine intervention. I believe it was divine appointment. The day before our last fourth and final interview, where we were really doing some good exposure of a librarian, Tanya O'Boyle, with her TikTok video bribing children to read porn distributed through the public library, paid for by the taxpayers. We had Dr. Rick Scarborough, who came on and told us about booklooks.org and gofollette.com.
Right.
And that's when everything pretty much exploded in Cameron. And I think now, seeing this, with what you're doing and what Dan's wanting to do, and I'm sure the other candidates are good old boys. I can't remember their names, folks. I'm usually pretty good about that, but I'm just having a brain fart. But I just only remember the name Dan Landy and Heath Gilbert. That's all I remember right now. Best plug I could give you, Heath.
I appreciate it.
I want to thank you for taking your time coming here. And the show is not over yet because, again, I have a dialogue and Heath respectfully knows what it's about. And I asked him if it's okay if I just carry that one by myself, because if I get the arrows, it's only me. Or if arrows are being shot, it's only me that's getting them. But Heath, thank you so very much, sir.
You're very welcome.
Get to your beautiful wife and have a wonderful, wonderful Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yes, sir. Peace. So, folks, what I was speaking about earlier, and Dan Landy and Heath and I and Travis and several other people were very, very close. We're very close knit. We do care about our community. We care about what's going on. We know that we're doing the right things. In about a couple, 2 weeks or so for myself, big thing is closing. Big thing's going to hopefully end. Once that's put to rest, I'm hoping to feel so much more like a phoenix rising out of the ashes. But, continuing on with the situation of school. And again, as I said earlier, I do believe homeschooling is probably the next big step for a lot of parents to consider. And if I were to be a governor or allowed to run for governor and become a governor, homeschool, this is the way it would go. You would get that tax, you would get that what would be considered educational rebates. So you would get that basically, not the 17,800, but you'd probably get something closer to 12, 13,000. And that's a good kick to help you be able to homeschool your kids. But this is a thing that came across to me was a parent about 2 months ago asked me this. I have a homeschooled kid, and I want that child to be part of the sports program at Cameron High School. So Dan Landy, who's running for school board, I spoke to him a couple weeks back. I said, Dan, I wouldn't mind you asking a question too. And this is hearsay now. This is me telling you this. But think about this in the long run. I said, a homeschool child wants to play sports. What does that child or the parents have to do to allow that child to play in the sports representing the Cameron High School? So Dan asked the superintendent, Matt Robinson, what the protocol or the policy was for a homeschool student to participate in activities outside of course, educational classrooms, theater, what have you, band, football, sports, basketball, baseball. And this was what Matt Robinson said to him. The MoDESI has two different policies, two different types of programs set up for the homeschooled student. One policy is 2 hours in the classroom. The rest of the hours of the day is homeschool. And that would allow a child to participate, say, on the football team. The second policy is 6 hours in the school, remaining hours in homeschool. And the child can play in sports. Those are the two policies that can be utilized. There's only one person that's allowed to push one of those two policies. I know you're never going to guess who it is. I'm going to tell you anyway. Matt Robinson, superintendent, is the end-all, be-all. He's His Excellency. Now, God bless Heath. Heath is much more diplomatic than I am. I can't handle Matt Robinson. I'd like to just take him by the ear, yank him out of that schoolroom, and never to return to another building again. That's what I would like to do. I think if he had any dignity and self-shame, he'd walk out on his own and resign. But it's all about the money. Because, see, Matt Robinson implemented the 6 hours in class, remaining homeschool, in order for the child to play on the football team. I'm sorry, I'm trying to homeschool to get my kids away from the academics that you are not teaching my children that I want to teach in my home to my child at my cost. And you want my child there for 6 hours? Why are you making my child go there for 6 hours when I don't want that child to be in the public school system? I'd rather him go for 2 hours. Well, folks, it really comes down to one thing. It comes down to money, 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 money. Money. That's what it's all about. It's all about money. 2 hours a day or 6 hours a day. Which one brings in more money? And when you really get down to it and you look a little bit further, this isn't only on our school district area. This isn't only on just our state level. We have 7 to 9% of federal money that comes into our state to be distributed through the public schools. It's the Federal Department of Education. It's a federal Department of Education. And then you've got the National Education Association. And then you have the American Federation of Teachers. And it's a trickle-down effect. It's all about the money. But they're going to spend $500,000 on an AstroTurf when they should take that $500,000, put in a couple extra teachers, make sure these kids graduate, and they can graduate proudly with honors that they can say, hey, I am ready to go into a well-known college. Let's prioritize our education. Let's start putting the sports and athletics on back burners. And if we do this, folks, this country is going to maybe stands half a chance of turning around. Because if our kids aren't educated and we don't do what we should for our children, we're going to turn around. It's just going to be, we're going to be a third world country soon. And I hate to say that, but I really do believe we will be a third world country. And you know, a lot of you probably feel like this right here. You know, you would rather sit alone in truth instead of agreeing just to fit in. You know what? This is how I feel. Right up there at the top. Sometimes I feel right like that. You know what, folks? That's not a bad spot to be, because when a friend of mine sent me this picture, I said, you know what? I'm actually up here alone, but I'm looking down at those that are just in the pit of a pile of sadness, of depression, because they cannot seem to figure it out. They need to start climbing up that hill. They need to start being a part of it. I want to share this little letter from last week. I'm going to share it again. To my kids and grandkids, I am sorry I was too weak to fight and stand up for your freedoms that I once enjoyed. I was too scared to lose my job, and I was afraid I'd offend my friends. The reason you don't have your freedoms anymore is because of people like me that thought others would do this fight. I did not stand with them. If you haven't stood up against this madness yet, y'all better get to memorizing this speech, because that's going to be your letter of regret. And as always, I like to do something a little bit different. So today is Valentine's Day. Elisa, love of my life, I just absolutely love you. I think you're a wonderful woman. You're my Valentine. I've got a whole bunch of Valentines. I think we all do. We've got a lot of people in our lives that we love and care for. But I'll tell you what, gentlemen, I've got something that you can share with your wives and girlfriends tonight. And it goes like this. Sung to Clementine. You're my darling, you're my sweetheart, I want you for my Valentine. You are precious, you are special, won't you please be my Valentine? I know. I better stick to just doing these shows and not singing. In the meantime, thank you. Love you all. Have a good night. I hope this show gets out and shared. And more than anything, I hope you got something out of it, because we really do need to make some final changes. We need to make some changes, because if we don't, we're doomed. Here we go, folks. Over and out. See you next week. Peace.